So while I was in Alaska, I also wanted to get you guys some books that are specifically related to the Alaska Native culture. It's similar to the Native American cultures in the lower 48 states, but it's also extremely different, and it's very different than what you might be accustomed to in your culture. So while I read this, pay attention to the things that are the same and then the things that are different with the culture you are in. This is called Charlie and the Blanket Toss. And in case you didn't know, I chose this specific book because the main character has the exact same name as my grandson. Yay, hey, hey! Charlie heard his father's happy shout. He knew what it meant. A whale had given itself to the people. Notice he didn't say they caught a whale or they captured a whale. He said the whale had given itself to the people, which is part of their culture. Today, the whaling crew's flag would fly over the captain's house. Our house. Charlie thought it was a sign to the village that said, "Good news, our crew was successful." Every family in the village would enjoy some fresh boiled whale meat and mactac, which is the skin and the blubber of the whale. If you're like me, you might be wondering what that tastes like or what it might be used for. Charlie hopped in place and clapped as Dad pulled Mom into the folds of his hunting parka. Then Charlie threw himself in to join the hug. Suddenly he was shouting too as his father tossed him up in the air. Whoa! At the very top, where up meets down, Charlie shut his eyes and held his breath. His stomach did a flip, and then he was in his father's arms again, laughing and squirming. "Just getting you ready for Nalgutak, son," his father said in his big, booming voice. And down here at the bottom, just like we talked about, if there's a word you may not know, you can either sound it out or it actually sounds it out. Nalgutak. So this is Charlie being tossed up in the air by his father and how excited he is, and then his mother. Naluktok, the summer whaling festival, was Charlie's favorite. Inupiaq was the holiday. Tradition said that those who caught a whale, his father's crew, decided when the outdoor celebration would be, but it was usually in June. So they didn't have a set date. Whoever caught the whale for the village was the one who decided on the date. There would be an all-day feast, storytelling, drumming, singing, and dancing to honor the whalers who helped provide for the community. And best of all, Charlie thought, the blanket toss. You might be saying, I bet that's where the name of the story came from. I think you're right. After dinner, Grandmother shared a story about Naluktok, telling it as she had heard it from her grandmother, and his grandfather before him, keeping the memory alive through talk. Inupiaq people, that's the name of their people, for thousands of years, we would take care of each other. His Anusa said, that means grandmother. One boat catches a whale. Nobody starves. Pretty good reasons for Naluktok, eh? And that is his grandma telling him the stories with pictures. Now, do I know how to speak Alaskan? But I'm reading how to pronounce them and I'm sounding them out as I do it. And did they always do the blanket toss too? Charlie asked. That is what Naluktok means. It is our Inupiaq word about blanket toss. We have no trees, so whale spotters climb the high ice ridges to look for a spouting whale. And the blanket toss, well, Inu chuckled. They say when my grandfather was a boy, he could fly higher and see farther on the blanket than any of the men spotting from the pressure ridges. He wasn't much older than you. So what she's explaining is young boys would get in a blanket and people would get on all sides and they would toss it up and he would look out to see if he could see the whales spouting water out of their blowholes. Do you think he was ever afraid, Anu? Charlie asked quietly. She waited a long moment before answering. Maybe, Charlie, she said, but do not worry. When it is your turn, you will be ready. And so that shows a picture of his great-grandfather being tossed by the blanket to look out. See how he's got his hand up here? To look out and see if he could find any whales. And if they saw whales out, then the whalers would go out and try and catch them. That night, as Charlie nestled in his pillow, he thought about the captains and their wives, the first to take turns on the blanket, throwing out candy while they were high above the crowd. And then he pictured his brother Bill's first time on the blanket. Friends and family held the rope handles, and together in a team of rhythm, and slowly they would circle, and slowly they would let the sealskin blanket droop, and then they would lift and droop, and then lift, and then pop! They snapped the blanket up and really tight. Bill flew up toward the midnight sun, his arms out and his feet churning like he was riding a bicycle. When Bill came down, he landed gracefully as a bird. Maybe this year that will be me, Charlie whispered before he fell asleep. So now it's kind of like if you do a piñata, you know, on a special celebration and you break it and the candy goes out. Now when they do the blanket toss, older people, when they're in the blanket, have candy that they throw out to all of the children. But then the children get to practice, just like this. Back in the times when they would do it to watch for the whales, they did not throw out candy while they were looking for the whales. They were actually just looking for the whales. As the weeks passed, everyone was busy getting ready. Charlie's Uncle Robert helped fasten new rope handles on the mapcook, which was the tough sealskin blanket. His mom sewed new sealskin kamipiak, or traditional boots, for Bill and for Charlie, while Anu worked on a pretty spring atigi. And Cousin Paul and the other crew made sure that the whale meat and the mactac were ready for serving. The whole village seemed to be looking forward and waiting for the festival. So here he is sewing the handles onto, this is made out of sealskin, which is really strong. And these are their traditional parkas or coats. And then this is showing them getting the whale blubber and meat ready. And they still do this the very traditional way in most of the villages. Finally, one June morning, Charlie opened his eyes, and the big day had arrived. Nagakaktak. Outside, the sun lit a cloudless blue sky, so bright that Charlie had to squint. Slabs of shore ice were still piled up in places, but the deep cold that pinched his nose and made his eyes water was finally gone. Strong sheets of plastic made a windbreak so that the people could sit comfortably and talk and eat while still keeping warm. Charlie raced ahead. So it is very windy where this village is at, and that's kind of necessary at that part of the beach where you can catch whales. So it gets really windy. So they would put up the plastic to block the wind. Boom, boom, boom. Charlie followed the sound of the drums. His aunties, girl cousins, and his friends' mothers were practicing in a neat row, dressed in pretty atuluk and cotton gloves. Late tonight, they would be performing the honor of the whalers. Although their feet didn't move, their heads and arms told the song's story. Feet together, knees bobbing with the beat of the drums, the gentle grace of their arms. Charlie loved it all. That's this part. And if you're paying attention to some of the stories I've told you about different dances within the native culture, this is actually very similar to what our cultures do. So that's the end of part 1. I will start part 2 in just a little bit. Thank you.